Hi, Michael Alvarez from Caltech, and this is one of our latest episodes in our continuing series of video presentations and webinars and interviews for our Resilient Elections project, which is a joint project between Caltech and the Voting Technology Project, Reed College, and the Early Voting Information Center there, which is led by Paul Gronke. Today, I wanted to talk about some of my experiences working and building collaborations with election officials. That's a very important aspect of the work that we do. And I think that there are some important lessons that I've learned that I'd like to share with my academic colleagues, and also to put out for some of our colleagues in the election official space to listen to perhaps learn from, and to maybe comment on and give us some feedback on at some point, because I'm always looking for advice and suggestions about how we can continue to improve the collaborations that we build and the process of building really strong synergies between academic and applied research and the work that election officials in our counties and states here in the United States are conducting. Put together a quick, short slide presentation to present just a few of the bullet points that I have about working with election officials and a few of the suggestions from my experience. The first thing that I think is very important when you're considering building a relationship and a collaboration, or even just making a simple data request with an election official, is that timing can be everything. Timing is extremely important. We have to always be cognizant of the fact that our state and local election officials are subject to different schedules than we as academics are. Many of them are conducting multiple elections in any particular year, and they also have other aspects of their professional lives and their professional responsibilities that can sometimes make it difficult for them to immediately fulfill our requests. So for example, it's not a great idea in my experience to ask an election official for data in the days and weeks leading up to an election. If you send them an email or try to give them a phone call during that period, they will oftentimes try to be as responsive as possible. However, don't be surprised if you don't hear from them immediately, or that it takes them days, sometimes weeks, to perhaps get you back the information that you're looking for. So be cognizant of when you're making the request. It's usually better to ask for data or information or materials about an election well in advance of that election, or after the canvass period is closed. So timing is very important. And I strongly encourage patience to my colleagues and academics to keep in mind that election officials may not be operating on the same schedule in the same time frame as we are. Secondly, in my experience, cooperation and collaboration can be very important. I've been working with election officials actually since 1998, so quite a long time. I've worked with election officials in municipal governments, in counties, states, federal agencies here in the US, and with election officials in a number of other countries. And going into the relationship as one that's a cooperative relationship and a collaboration, I think, is always the right mindset. What that means is that oftentimes we're going to be making big, important, and in some cases somewhat risky asks from our colleagues who manage and administer elections. And going into that relationship in a spirit of collaboration, I think is the right mindset to have. I think when you make requests for data or for information, or for their assistance about learning how the process works in their jurisdiction, really framing it as a cooperative effort, as a collaborative effort, as one that's important for not only your research but your teaching, is really important, because I think that in that spirit, election officials are going to be much more interested and excited about working with us if they know that they're going to get something out of it that's going to help them improve the administration of elections in their jurisdiction, or which will help them professionally among their colleagues and peers, or help improve their processes and technology. With the cooperative spirit and collaborations, I've been very, very successful at building a number of strong, important projects and relationships with election officials that I think that I know are very valuable to me and my research group. I also think they're valuable to the election officials we worked with. The third thing is always try to get feedback and respect the election official's point of view. This, I think, is very important early on in a research project. For example, let's say you get a data set from an election official. They've sent you some data on wait times in their polling places and vote centers from an election. You want to write a paper, or you want to do some work with one of your classes or with some of your students using that data. My experience has been that once you've done that analysis and perhaps have written a draft of a paper, or you're going to give a presentation at a conference, if you can get a little bit of time from the election official who provided that information to you, it's always important to get their feedback. Because many times the way we frame things as academics, the language that we use, is very different than the language that an election official would use. And sometimes the context is very important, and the nuances in the data and the interpretation of the data can be very important as well. So I think getting that feedback and being respectful of their point of view, trying to incorporate their perspective into the research and teaching that we do using their data and their information is a really important process of building these strong working relationships. And that leads me to my next point, which is trust. I think that academics who have been successful at working with election officials over a long period of time have been those who have built relationships and a strong reputation for being trustworthy. And again, as I said earlier, you have to recognize that in some cases when an election official is providing us with information, there's some risk to them. We might take that data and find something in it that could indicate that perhaps there's an issue with the administration of an election, or a technological problem, or something else that may not be apparent to them in the data when they provided it, but that could be a problem for them, or could indicate that there's an issue that is going on in their election jurisdiction. I think a relationship of trust would be letting them know about that issue when you find it. Not going to your local newspaper with it immediately, but letting the election official know, giving them an opportunity to take a look at it, to investigate it, to give you some feedback, and again, perhaps provide you with that nuance and context. That's important. I think that's how you build trust. Again, we're in this for a relationship. We're trying to build cooperation and collaboration. And those kinds of research and policy partnerships are built on trust. I also think it's important that you try to understand and respect differences in goals and motivations between us as academics and our colleagues who are administering elections. As academics, we have a certain set of imperatives. We want to publish papers in peer-reviewed journals. We want to teach and mentor our students. We want to, engage professionally in activities with our colleagues. Election officials have different goals and motivations. In many cases, election officials are appointed. Some cases, they're elected. Some situations, they are responsive to elected officials in turn. Most of them have people they report to. And I think we need to respect the fact that they oftentimes have different professional goals and motivations, and that we have to be very careful as we navigate the kinds of things that we can do with our data, and to really understand that we can say very powerful things as academics with data, and that we really need to make sure that they're framed in a way that is synergistic with the goals and motivations of our colleagues in the election administration world. Again, they have different professional goals and motivations than we do. And I think that respecting those differences and understanding them is one of the important aspects to building a strong working relationship that's built on trust, and that will lead to long-term collaboration and cooperation. And finally, I think it's important to remember that every collaboration makes the next one easier. That's been my experience. Each particular project or cooperative arrangement or collaboration that I have engaged in with an election official in one jurisdiction oftentimes makes the next one easier. I understand better how to make those requests. I understand their goals and motivations better. I get better at understanding the context and nuances of the data. I also, am able to use those successful collaborations as examples for other election officials about what we can do to help them to improve the administration of elections in their jurisdiction. You also have to keep in mind that election officials are very well networked. They have many professional organizations that they participate in, and that they certainly oftentimes will talk with their colleagues about cooperation and collaboration that is successful with academics, and certainly when it's not. And so, building a strong reputation for each collaboration, I think is very important as you want to build further collaborations down the road. There's also a sense in which each of us as academics has a responsibility to the academic community more generally. By making successful collaborations, we make it easier for our colleagues in other universities and other fields to build similar cooperative relationships with election officials. So, as academics, we have a responsibility to the broader academic community to try to build these cooperative arrangements and to work closely and well with our colleagues in election administration, so that all the rest of the academic community can experience those kind of relationships as well. These are just some of my thoughts about working with election officials. I find these relationships and these projects to be a lot of fun. I learn a great deal from them. We obtain a significant amount of really important, useful data. I integrate them very well with my teaching and mentoring of students. Our students at Caltech get many opportunities to interact directly with election administrators and those who are actually conducting elections on the ground. And students always find those to be incredibly powerful opportunities for learning about how elections really run. And so, again, I just provide these as some thoughts about how we can all as academics do a better job working with election officials. And we can help election officials build more resilient elections as a result of these successful collaborations. Thank you very much for your time, and look forward to seeing you in an upcoming segment of our ongoing series on resilient elections.